This is a meeting of the Cabinet I'm going to move straight into item 1, which is attendance. There's a sheet going round. No apologies for absence. Declarations of interest, Linda.
Thank you, Leader. I've had some discussions with members. They've alerted me to some of their interest, and they relate to governorship. So for the efficiency of the meeting, if I just take members through those that they've raised with me, and if you'd say agree as we go along. First of all, Councillor Gwenara Clark, I know you're a council-appointed governor for Garn Teg, so you have a personal interest in item 7. Is that correct? And then if we go on to item 13, Councillors Henton, Councillors Daniels are council-appointed governors for Llantarnam Comprehensive School, so you both have personal interest there. Yeah, thank you. And then, Councillor Jones, you've got two interests in the last item, on item 14. You're a council-appointed governor for Pontnewydd, which is a personal interest. Your wife is also a governor, and we've discussed that, and for the purposes of this decision, that would still be a personal interest. Is that agreed? And of course, the personal interest means that you can all stay and take part in the debate and vote. Thank you, Leader.
Right, thanks for that. Now then, on to the minutes of the meeting on Tuesday, Tuesday the 24th of March. I'll take you through them. Page 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All agree the minutes, please show. Thanks very much. On then to item 5. Anything to report?
No, thank you, Leader. The action sheet is there for information unless members have any questions.
Thanks for that. On now then to item 6. This is the Order of Recovery Policy Property. Who's doing this? Nigel. Over to you, Nigel.
Thank you, Leader. This is just part of our approach to debt recovery. As members will know, it has been subject to a couple of discussions already at Policy Development Forum, and it's about when we have to enforce the sale of a property, when there's a proper charge against it. I'm not going to go in it. Let me just find my way down to the. I won't go through the policy in detail. I'll just bring out a couple of points. In paragraph 4.7, it explains when we will use it and what the policy intent is about, and it's part of our whole suite of policies around debt recovery. Then in 4.9, I bring out that there are some current instances where we may have to consider it, and the sums involved. And in those instances, people are renting out the properties, despite there being a debt owed to the council. I make the point in 4.10 that if any debt we have to write off, well, whatever it is, obviously comes at a cost to all the taxpayers of the borough. And then the final point I want to bring out on the report is in 5.4, where we make the point that this is only going to be used in very exceptional circumstances and will only be done with the approval of the Executive Member for Resources and Corporate Governance, alongside myself and all Chief Officer. The relevant Chief Officer and Executive Member would be fully briefed. So we have a range of policies around debt recovery, and this is just an extension and addition to them.
Thank you for that, Nigel. You see the recommendation on page 15 also. Agreed. Do you want to say that? No? Too late now. Never mind. Thanks for that. Now then we're on to item 7, which is the business justification case to the Welsh Government on 21st Century Schools. This is Dermot.
Thank you, Leader. This report seeks approval to submit the business justification cases to Welsh Government as part of our 21st Century Schools programme, with particular focus on Comfortore and Garn Teg. This is around the expansion and refurbishment of both schools, and in addition, because we're exceeding 25% of the capacity, we also need to go into statutory consultation about these proposals as well, so we're seeking approval to do that in addition. Obviously, in previous projects, we've also come to you to seek approval to release some of our funding in advance of getting approval from Welsh Government, which we're asking in this report as well, to get on with some of the preparatory work to ensure that we can meet the timescales that we've outlined in the report, which are available on page 34 of the report. So the proposal here is, obviously, we're looking to spend around £3.7 million on Comfort and 4.3 million in Garanteg, 50% of that coming from Welsh Government, the other 50% from ourselves. So the amounts we're looking to release immediately to enable us to get on with the pre-construction work are detailed at 3.2, which is 212,000 for the Garanteg project and 414,000 for Comfort. We anticipate, subject to approval, that we'd begin the statutory consultation process later in this term to enable us to proceed. So both business cases are outlined in the appendices, and the detail then in terms of what we're proposing to do are outlined there. The risks in this case are detailed in, and I haven't put it on screen, so I apologise. I can get to them. In section 8 on page 35, and clearly there is a risk here that Welsh Government may not agree with the proposal. We're quite confident that what we've outlined is still in line with what we agreed with, had agreement from Welsh Government, outline agreement in our 21st Century Schools programme, so we're anticipating these projects will proceed, but clearly there is some risk there. Ultimately, if we don't proceed with these projects, then there is a risk that other proposals contained in the overall programme will also be at risk, because clearly we're trying to shuffle a number of different projects at one time. So we're very keen to make sure that we can proceed as quickly as possible and get that preparatory work done in advance of the proposals going in.
Right, thanks, Dermot. Dave, do you want to say something?
Only to add that, because I concur with everything and support the proposals, just to add that there's an element of demand management in the thinking here, because the anticipation is that there will be a growth in terms of the demand on both of these properties, both of these schools, and it's in that context that we are driving this forward in this way. Rather do it this way and be prepared than have to be reactive. We've determined it's rather better to be proactive, and this underpins the thinking behind this. I hope that others around the table will have a similar positive response to these proposals, and that remains to be seen. So anybody that wants to ask a question, please feel free.
Any questions on the table? No? If not, then we see the recommendations on page 36. All show. Thanks very much for that. To meet, Alison's going to present this. This is on the Strategic Operation Model Assessment, new ways of working.
Thank you, Leader. Actually, this report dovetails very nicely to the discussions that we've had earlier on today about the peer review, because it is about how we can look to the future and accept the fact that we can't carry on dealing with our resources and our services in the way that we have, because we're coming into times that are unprecedented in terms of the amount of resources we've got available. So this report is seeking your endorsement to carry out a strategic operating model assessment across our organisation in order to procure the necessary external strategic assistance that we need to complete the work. And as you'll see, the key messages are at section 2 of the report, and as I say, they very much mirror the conversations we've had earlier on today. Traditional approaches are not going to be sustainable. We're moving into times we've never experienced before, so we can't carry on doing what we've always done. We need new service delivery models to make that feasible. We know that we're going to have more demand and less budget, And we know that that's been the norm in other parts of the UK for quite a long time, and Wales has been protected. So in that respect, we can take the learning that there is in other parts of the UK by engaging with a strategic partner and actually be able to build our plans and our intentions on the basis of what we can learn from that. So it is quite important that we get some external support from people who've already done this type of work in order to help us. So the report then goes through the background, and I think members are very familiar with that. We've been taking a lot of service efficiencies out of Torfaen for a long time. We've used innovation wherever we can. We've downsized services whenever we can. We've had to stop some services, but so far we've managed not to take any major service cuts or very large swathes of compulsory redundancies. But we know that that time is drawing to an end. And the 2016-17 budget year is going to be pretty pivotal in terms of seeing the demographic and financial pressures really begin to hit us in a way which means that we have to change the way we do things. So we need to think differently about how we deliver services and how we organise services. Now, members will know that we had an expression of interest for voluntary merger. If we'd been able to proceed with that, if we'd had the backing of Welsh Government to do that, then I think that would have been a time when we could have really started this work seriously. But we weren't able to proceed with that, but that doesn't mean that we just give up the idea and say, well, we'll just sit around and wait to see what Welsh Government tells us is going to happen with the map. We really need to get on and start thinking about new models of service delivery. And this report is the first stage in that. So, what are we going to do about it? Well, we know that our neighbours, Blaenau Gwent, who we were intending to start merger with, had we been able to do so, have actually engaged with a strategic partner, and they have had a new narrative that they've been helped to develop by that strategic partner, and they've shaped a transformation programme which will enable them to significantly drive down overall cost across the whole of their organisation. And that's the sort of thing that we need to do now, regardless of whether we can merge quickly or whether we will have to wait till maybe even 2020 before the mergers that are planned take place. So we have a compelling set of reasons that we want to proceed with on our own basis. So if I can take you to 3.10 of the report, you will see there that we have received a proposal from a potential strategic partner, and that breaks down this piece of work into 3 stages. What this report is looking at is just stage 1, and stage 1 would typically take about 4 weeks to do. It would be a series of high-level workshops and interviews with key people across the organisation, members, of course, being a very important part of that, and an authority-wide data-gathering exercise when those partners would come in and just look at the organisation with a fresh set of eyes, with experience from other parts of the UK, and say, this is what you need to do in order to change the way that you operate to survive into the future. And you will see that Appendix 2 of the report gives a full set of the sort of tasks that would be undertaken. We anticipate that the cost of that piece of work, stage 1, would be around £30,000, which in terms of what we would get out of it, in terms of the amount of cost that we would be able to save in the following budget, would actually be, in my recommendation, a very good use of money. So if we look at paragraph 9 of the report, those recommendations are there. The first recommendation is that you, as a Cabinet, endorse the implementation of a strategic operating model assessment across the organisation. And the second recommendation is that you delegate to the Assistant Chief Executive for Resources, to Nigel, the ability to carry out the necessary procurement and to appoint external strategic assistants to work alongside the Council to undertake that work. So I would recommend, members, that you accept those recommendations.
Thanks for that. Any members, any comments? If not, all agree with the report. Please show. Thanks very much. Thank you, Alison. We're on now to item 9, to further extend the agreement with Heady Police for the provision of an additional 10 community support officers in Torfaen. This is Lyndon Putty.
Thank you, Leader. Morning, Cabinet. The report you have in front of you today is the report to further extend the provision of an additional 10 community safety officers that operate throughout Torfaen. This report I bring to you on an annual basis as it's subject to that review, and there's a report as Appendix 1 from the Community Safety Partnership Inspector that will provide some of the background details to you that you've already had and read. If I may, Leader, I'll just go through some of the key messages here. The Council's made this contribution since 2007. The current contribution is around 33% to the additional 10 CSOs, and that attributes to about £110,000, and that's already within the budget allocation for this year. The process is that we provide the funding for the additional CSOs to undertake the duties for us, and this is then the support that we get as a council from the community safety teams. The report you have is requesting a consent for a further year is afforded, but also Gwent Police has put forward an offer that, as part of this provision, that they would be prepared to keep to the same costs for a 2-year period, but that would be subject to Cabinet approval. So the recommendation, Leader, is to Cabinet that they consider that the provision to extend the CSO agreement is for 15-16 at the same rate, but also the Cabinet consider whether they wish to extend that over 2 years.
Ernest, David, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's obvious that we've been impacted by significant sort of budgetary pressures over the past couple of years, and that's projected to continue. I'm of the opinion that it's probably not wise, although we see the value of this provision, to commit to 2 years when each year on year we're having to review our budget. So I'm recommending to everybody that we go with option 1, which is for 1 year.
Right, Anthony?
I'd like to support that report. I think the community support officers do a valuable job in assisting communities across Torvine in tackling antisocial behaviour and crime. I think it's deeply regrettable the cuts that have been made to the policing budget, and we can't do any, we can't fill that gap as a whole as a council. What we can do is try and make this contribution towards building safer communities, and I think this is valuable in that respect.
Any other member want to make a comment? All agree the recommendation? Or Dave, sorry.
I was going to say was to support the last speaker and put ourselves in the position of imagining what our community would be like if we withdrew this funding. And that's a stark reminder and a stark kick up the pants to anybody that was contemplating perhaps not supporting this. So I'm fully behind it, yeah.
Thanks for that. Are we going with recommendation A? All agreed, show. Thanks so much. On to item 10, which is the Gwent Area Planning Board Memorandum of Understanding. This is Mark Sharwood. Don't confuse this with planning. It's planning to do with Commission of Substance Misuse. Over to you, Mark.
Quite a simple report, actually, members. At the moment, all the funding for substance misuse comes from Welsh Government, with a little bit from Health. In the past, it was allocated on a local authority basis, but it is now allocated on a Gwent-wide basis instead. So this has meant that where in the past we've had ad hoc partnership arrangements over different substance misuse services, we now have to work together on a Gwent basis to do this. The lead authority for this is Newport, so the money goes to them, and quite understandably they wish to have a memorandum of understanding which sets out the sharing of liabilities and the basis for which the Area Planning Board will meet. So this report outlines all of the memorandum of understanding, its terms of reference, etc., and I'd like you to agree to it. In addition, I'd like you to agree to allocate responsibility for membership of that board to David Congreve, the Assistant Chief Executive for Communities. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for that, Mark. Lewis?
Certainly agree with the report, but I was just inquiring as to, does the legal highs come under the remit of this or not?
All alcohol and substances will come underneath, so it does include legal highs. the issue of legal highs and the services that are available for people who decide they want to have support on that are the same as for all the other substances. So if people feel that they wish support to deal with legal highs, they can enter this service the same as if they would with heroin or cocaine or even alcohol.
Just clarify, I wasn't talking about support. I was, we've had different outbreaks throughout the borough of these shops setting up selling legal highs, and there's been a lot of unfortunate circumstances around them. We're trying to get them closed down or after, but I'm asking, is there a remit within this to prevent the setting up of legal highs where they're causing problems? Thank you.
No, the Area Planning Board doesn't exist to prevent the head shops and the selling of legal highs. That is our own trading standards and the police's responsibility.
Anybody else want to make a comment? If not, then all agree the recommendation, Shaw. Thanks so much. On non-residential care packages. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, members. I don't think this is going to be quite as quick as I know members would like, because I think this is one of those areas that will present a bit of a challenge for us. Just to put this in context, this was one of those red areas in last year's budget mitigations that, if we knew that more resources were coming, you wouldn't have put this up as an option. But as part of our budget strategy, we are having to look everywhere to try and see where efficiencies can be made. And the purpose of this report is to seek Cabinet approval to consult on the introduction of a usual maximum expenditure policy. And I think it's important that we do more than we would normally do in terms of consultation, and to set up a specific user group and members of the citizen panel, form a task and finish group, because this could be quite contentious. So we want to make sure we do this open and transparently and seek people's views. So I'm recommending to you that you note the principles set out in that draft policy to determine the usual maximum expenditure. And what I'm proposing is, once we've done a wide-ranging consultation, we come back to Cabinet via PDF first, so I can feed back to you on what the public think, on what user groups think, because it could be one of those areas that will be a challenge for us. I've put down there at 4.2 the measures that, some of the measures that have already been taken in adult services in particular. And you can see that we've outsourced the majority of our services, so where other councils are starting to do that now to make efficiencies, we've done that several years ago. We've revised our eligibility criteria, so it's only critical and substantial that receive a service from us. We've looked at all of our contracts to make sure there's value for money. We've right-sized care packages to make sure we're promoting independence. And we've started to look at what can we do in terms of rehabilitation and short-term interventions that of a higher value, but with a view to reducing that support on the longer term. So this is part of a whole suite of measures that we've been working on over the last couple of years. And 4.3 I want to highlight there. Despite of all of those measures, because demand is still increasing, because budgets are potentially going to be reducing, the only way we can do this is to try and make some of these difficult decisions. So it is a challenging policy area to consider, but it's the only way we're really going to try and match some of that budget and demand. And I put there under 4.4 that £300,000 estimate. That would be a full year, and depending on everybody saying yes to these proposals. And if I explain how that estimate, and it's an estimate, because we don't know what will happen in the real world yet, we can only forecast what we think the demand is likely to be, with older people living longer, with people with complex disabilities surviving longer. So these are estimates based on demographic changes we forecast. But how you would make the savings is if you think about a residential setting, that costs about £500 a week. So that would cost, if you like, to the system, either the council paying or individual clients paying a contribution, and that's means tested. That costs about 26 to 30k a year for residential care. And we can obviously charge for residential care, and that's all means tested, so it's relative to the savings that people have in their bank account, it's relative to whether they own their own property, and the policy that Nigel described earlier is part of the way we collect some of those charges after a house has been sold. But even if we estimated that clients could be supported in a residential setting just as well to meet their needs, and they only had to contribute 50% of that charge, that would cost them about £13,000 a year. That compares to the maximum we can charge anybody, no matter what the cost of their package of care is at home, is £3,000 a year, because there is a cap on the non-residential charge. You can't charge anybody more than £60 a week. So even people with very, very high complex needs, where the costs to the state, if you like, of providing that care and support, runs into the few £100s a week for several people, we can only charge £60. So there's a perverse incentive for people to stay home. And it's our policy direction. We want people to stay home. But we're starting to face issues in terms of sustainability. And many of you will have seen in the press, I guess, where some care home providers are going bankrupt. Not in Torfaen. We've been very good at developing mature relationships with our providers and trying to make sure we've got a range of providers who are able to support us. But certainly Powys, Neathport Talbot, Swansea, they've all had significant problems in supporting people and providing that continuity of care. So there's both a sustainability factor here in terms of making sure somebody who may need 5, 6, 7 calls a day, trying to ensure that continuity by the same carer, the same provider, is becoming challenging. And there's also an economic impact, as I've just described. I think we have to be fair that if we weren't in the difficult budget situation we were in, and we didn't see demographic demand still increasing, we wouldn't be bringing this proposal to you. But these are one of the very difficult challenges we have. We know it's legal. We can do it, and we know that other parts of the UK are implementing this policy. But we want to make sure we've tested it out with a range of stakeholders before we bring it back to you for implementation. So hopefully I've explained to you what the policy is about. I think it's one of those policy areas where we really need to go carefully, test it out with some key stakeholders and bring that back before we make the ultimate decision. I've spoken to colleagues in the Equalities Unit at Welsh Government, and this potentially would impact on people with protected characteristics under the Equalities Act, but it doesn't mean you can't make the decision. As long as you're open and transparent and it's clear, you can still make that decision, because it would be applicable to all clients who may potentially have those protected characteristics. So I didn't want to say anything further at this stage to give chance for any questions. Thank you.
All right, Richard.
Well, again, following through, she does present the report, and there's not a lot to follow. But I think we're in the situation where, if I can use the expression, we've gone through the soft tissue and we're close to the bone. The report asks us to accept the principles of this policy. Naturally, if it wasn't for the budgetary and the high demand position that we're in, we wouldn't be looking to support those principles. They go against many fibres in many of our bodies, but it's the position we're in. I think some other authorities actually do this in practice. I think the process of going out to the public now, and user groups in particular, will give us a firm basis to create this policy, and including the users and the carers for these services. So in tough times, I think this is the only way we can go forward, bearing in mind what we've just heard prior to this Cabinet meeting. This is our innovative response to dealing with a crisis that we're faced by budget and demand.
Thanks for that. Anybody else? If not, all agree the recommendation, show. Thanks so much. Next item, Sue, is you again, is the tender for the award, the respite service for people with learning disabilities and physical disabilities. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, members. This shouldn't be contentious. This is a report setting out there a new retendering process that we've been through. And as usual, we always form a project group to have a look at how do we remodel that service, look at that specification whenever a contract is due for renewal. And through looking at the needs assessment and the work that I described earlier about right-sizing packages of care, we think we can meet our requirements for respite care by reducing some of that provision in terms of number of nights of respite care allowed, but extending the provision so that more people access it, particularly people with a physical disability. We've been pretty good at finding respite settings for people with a learning disability, because usually you don't need to make much changes to the fabric of those facilities. But we've worked well with our provider over the last few years to start planning for future demand and meeting the needs of different people. And this will enable us to extend the provision for more people, but obviously it will mean fewer nights of respite for some people, but in conjunction with their care plan. The report sets out all of the processes we follow. I don't propose to go through all of those. Just to highlight on 7.1.3, again, another demonstration of the efficiency that we've delivered by retendering and respecifying. We've delivered nearly £73,000 worth of savings, and by staying with the same provider but working well with them to remodel their provision, to help us meet the financial challenges ahead, and we were pleased. We were surprised that we didn't have more providers coming to the table to look to provide this service, and the current provider is the one who submitted the revised proposal. So they meet all the quality standards, but we've delivered an efficiency as well by working closely with them. So I recommend the award of that contract to you.
Thanks very much. Any comments, Anthony? No, sorry.
Just welcome that saving of £72,881. It's, especially in the context of the last conversation where we're having to make decisions that really, are gut-wrenching and that we wouldn't want to make in another situation. It's good to see that we've managed to build in some of that efficiency. My question was, what do you think the reason is that there aren't more people bidding for this sort of work?
It is very specialist, and it is very high cost. A lot of providers that come to the market, particularly if you're looking at residential settings, they want volume. So they can create efficiencies by having 30 beds, say, in a residential setting. This is small, bespoke, group home type activity, which is, I guess, the returns on their investment are not as large as if you were developing an institution, and we don't want an institutional setting for this type of provision. This will be for support to carers primarily, and for the individual service user to have a break from their normal home setting.
Right, anybody else? If not, see the recommendations, all agree, sure. Thanks very much. Item 13 now then. Disposal of land at Lantarnum Comprehensive School site, Lantarnum. This is Victor. Welcome, Victor. Good man. Over to you.
Good afternoon. The report pertains to the Lantarnum comprehensive school. A bit of background to where we are is the comprehensive school is due to close at the end of the summer term. On part of the site is going to be a new primary school to be constructed. I believe the report is going to planning committee this afternoon for determination by coincidence. So what we're left with on the site is the footprint of the comprehensive school building. There's a caretaker's bungalow, and there's also a leisure centre, and there's some open land around it. So that's the site plan that is showing on the screen. And the proposal is that that land be declared surplus to council requirements and pave way for the disposal process to commence. As part of the consideration, there has, and it's mentioned in the report, there is a possibility that the site would have been required for the new Cumbrian High School if works at the Fairwater site in progress as quickly as possible. But later I've been informed that everything is on course and it's not likely to be required. But it's in the report, and if it does turn out that things change, there is scope to adjust the timescales to accommodate that as well. So in terms of the recommendations in this case is to declare surplus requirements the land that's not required for the primary school and the playing fields, and that the marketing process can commence in due course, and then a further report will come to Cabinet when the marketing outcome is known.
Thank you, Vic. David.
Yeah, thanks for that, Victor. How have you worked with any community or business groups who have expressed an interest in taking on board the leisure centre? Yes,
the process of preparing to get to this point has probably been going on for a year or so, and during that period we have had approaches from members of staff and other people involved with the leisure centre exploring the possibility of them taking over the leisure centre in some shape or form. We asked them to present a formal proposal several times along the way, and eventually gave them a deadline of 31st of March to submit a written proposal of how they saw this working, and by that date we hadn't received anything, so it was only thereafter that we submitted the report on the basis that there is no interest in the leisure centre, because we haven't received anything in writing.
So you wouldn't consider any future expressions of interest then?
I'd say because of the time that we kind of allowed for something to come forward, and having come this far along the journey, I don't think it would be appropriate for us to reopen the situation, because we have to bear in mind that with the primary school going on the site and due to open 1st of September next year, it would be beneficial for the school if we are way down the process with the disposal of the rest of the sites, that at least we can have a developer on board to clear off the buildings before the school opens, because it's not really ideal for there to be demolition works at the same time as a new school is opening or while the school has just opened. So I think the more appropriate response would be that we have considered it, nothing has come forward, and the matter is closed.
I've seen somebody asking about the clock tower. Have anybody inquired about that?
We have received a request about making a photographic record of the clock tower, and that will be taken into account as we go through the process. So there will be a record made of the clock tower.
Anybody else?
Yeah, one quick question. There's a plaque in Llantarnam School commemorating the death of one of the local heroes, and there is an expression of interest from certain quarters about what could or should be done with that plaque. Have you come across this request, and if so, what do you plan to do?
No, this is the first time that I've heard about it, but certainly we are open to accommodating, and anything that preserves the historic records about the site is something that we would look to accommodate as best as possible.
Yeah, so nobody ever made any representation to you at this stage about that memorial that's there? Because my understanding was that there was discussion taking place and that there would be a possibility that it would go to Fairwater, but I mean the people to determine that have got to be the family of the person that's represented there. So you've had no inquiry or whatever?
No, I've had no inquiries about the plaque. The only thing that has been mentioned to me is the clock tower.
All right.
No, I'd certainly like to add my voice to that. I hope both of the governing bodies, both of the New Cumbrian High and Llantarnam can try and work with the Education Authority and others to make sure that the plaque commemorating the life of Private James Prosser is transferred and that a fitting memorial is continued into the new school.
See the recommendations, all agreed, Joe? Thanks so much. Last item on the agenda is item 14, which is the disposal of Ponnawynydd Primary School. Is this you again, Victor? It is.
Sorry, again, I put the plan on the screen. Again, this is another school that's due to close at the end of the summer term. The site is slightly different from the Llantarnam site in that it's got quite a few challenges based on its topography, the way the highway network is around there. So while a lot of the sites that we've had becoming surplus in the past have had a lot of interest and inquiries even before they closed, this one potentially could be a difficult one because of the physical constraints surrounding the site. But we propose to still put it on the market, see what the response might be, and if there isn't a response or reasonable offers through an informal tender process, the next proposal would be to try a disposal through a public auction. If that doesn't work either, then we will look to explore whether there is the possibility of a community asset transfer, if there's a group in the community which might be interested to take it on and actually have a viable proposal for it. There is one other challenge with the site in that there are records which show that it's a major bat roost, and bats are protected species under EU law, so it's something that we'll need to, again, work around. So it's a site that has almost got all the issues that you dread to face and deal with on the site. But we are aware of the issues and we'll try and deal with them as best as we can. So the recommendations are firstly to declare the site surplus requirements, to authorise the marketing of the site, and if there is a successful marketing outcome, then to delegate the disposal process, the approval of the disposal arrangements to the executive member for resources. But if that doesn't work and we're pursuing a community asset transfer, the recommendation is to come back to Cabinet with the details of the proposal at a later date.
Thanks for that. Any comments anyway? If not, all agree the recommendation, show. Thanks so much. That